Well, let us continue the conversation now as we bring in yet our next panel, Skyping in from Virginia, presidential historian Craig Shirley, and from Utica, New York, pollster John Zogby of Zogby Analytics. Gentlemen, only about 30 seconds each, and then we're going to bring you back in a second. But Craig, in the Republican Party, it used to be moderates against conservative. Tonight, it's outsiders against establishment. Does an outsider win this thing?
Well, an outsider is going to win because if you total up all the outsider votes, so Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, right now it totals about 65% of the Republican primary. So an outsider is going to win. It's just a question of who.
All right, John, on the Democratic side, Bernie seems to have the momentum. What are you expecting?
I'm actually expecting, because there's a high turnout, this to be a real horse race. I'm told that the Sanders people are disappointed in the numbers of first-time voters on the Democratic side, but still 41% of the total voters are first-time voters, and I think they're feeling the burn.
John and Craig, stay right where you are, and we hope you're going to stay right where you are, because Newsmax TV throughout this evening will have in-depth caucus coverage. After we wrap it up, Dennis Michael Lynch continues the coverage on Unfiltered. Then at 10, Ed Berliner hosts The Hardline. And at 11 Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, I will join you again from this anchor desk for another live hour of Newsmax Prime. So keep it right here. And we want to know which candidate you're backing in our Newsmax poll. Vote now at newsmaxpolls.com. That's newsmaxpolls.com. More with John and Craig right after this.
And I got to tell you, this race right now, it's neck and neck. It's all about turnout. This race is a statistical tie between me and Donald Trump. It all comes down to turnout, who shows up tonight at 7 p.m.
And now at 7:15 Central Standard Time, you are looking live at one auditorium in the Hawkeye State, one location. And while we see this gathering in an auditorium and really see one of the caucus speakers, you should note that they are gathering in all 99 counties, whether it's church fellowship halls or lecture halls at universities or in some other more distinctive and Iowa-esque locations. The Iowa caucuses are underway. With Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth, let's continue our discussion with a panel we brought in before the break. Pollster John Zogby of Zogby Analytics joins us via Skype from Utica, New York. And screen right, fittingly, from Virginia, presidential historian Craig Shirley. Gentlemen, as we continue on here, John, since you are our resident pollster, there have been a lot of questions about the accuracy of these polls. Given the dynamic of the caucus process, are these polls really strong indications of what's going to transpire?
Of how people feel on the way in to the caucuses, and by trend, not necessarily by percentage point. And so what we know is that we've got three folks bunched at the top on the Republican side and a tight race on the Democratic side. That's fair enough. But from there to predict what happens inside those caucuses, no, because anything can happen.
Rick, I want to ask you, it looks like weather's been pretty good there so far. I think 3 a.m. is when it's supposed to, this heavy stuff is supposed to hit. Do you think weather will play a huge factor in Iowa tonight?
No,
I don't think so.
Sorry, that question was for Craig.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Miranda, no, I don't think, in fact, I think weather is playing just the opposite. I think that my guess is that on both sides, just look at all the media attention, all the money spent by the candidates. There's probably going to be a record turnout on both sides. It'll be the highest ever turnout, and partially it's because the weather's being so cooperative. It's practically balmy, I'm told, in Iowa today. So I think weather is going to be a factor, but to the good instead of to the bad.
Yeah.
So to quote that outstanding political analyst Bill Murray, the hard stuff is not going to come down for quite some time. Thank you very much. John Zogby, let me go back to you, and I just have to ask this question. I was talking about it earlier. The dynamic is different across party lines. Republicans listen to speeches, then cast secret ballots. Democrats go into different locations in the caucus hall all. There's no secret ballot. Forgive me, I guess my partisanship is showing, but doesn't that make for a circumstance where people are browbeaten between campaigns?
Yes, and that's a part of democracy as well. And what's interesting is that it may not even have anything to do with ideas. It could mean Pastor so-and-so, you're voting for her, and Pastor so-and-so looking askance like this and saying you're voting for him. There's a lot of social dynamic and neighborhood dynamic stuff that takes place as well. It's more like the democratic tradition of a town meeting than it is the Australian ballot.
But the Republicans, it seems so simple, just the secret ballot. Craig, why don't you weigh in on this? What do you think?
Well, I think John's exactly right, and I think it points to the flaw of, I've always thought focus groups were very flawed because one strong personality can dominate 12 less dominant personalities and skew the outcome. And I think that's also true with the way these caucuses run. Of course, it's historic and it's not going to change. I prefer the Republican way, although even then is that they're still subjected to speeches, so there's still some pressure that goes on there. But I guess it's a unique system, and it's quaint, and it gives us certainly something to talk about. But
Well,
at the end of the
speaking
day,
of talking about it, we should point out that, again, Republicans, or at least one Republican, is under fire. Ted Cruz, with that mailer that went out that said there were bad voting grades. So there is social pressure on the right. John Zogby, the reason he's using it is because it works, does it not? Via direct mail, shaming voters?
It can work, but then also, usually when there's a quote or an action that takes a politician down, it's because it's emblematic of a negative, a broader negative about that politician. In Ted Cruz's case, what has come out, particularly in the last 10 days, he's mean, his colleagues don't like him, he doesn't get along with people. And by sending out this kind of mailer, it became, I think, something larger than even a legitimate sort of thing that you point out. It became sort of, as I said, emblematic of maybe the not so kind, not so gentle Ted Cruz.
All right, we'll see what happens, see if that was effective. In the interim, John Zogby, Craig Shirley, gentlemen, we thank you very much for your time. You heard what they had to say and what we had to say too. Agree or disagree? Send us your comments at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Up next, from Iowa to Iran. Wait till you hear what's going on over there.